Greetings, thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Saturday, April 9, 2022. For today's editorial, growing commuter crisis needs swift action. From the perspective of Metro Manila's commuters, the post-pandemic new normal has turned out to be far worse than the old normal. In spite of the completion of several transportation infrastructure projects since the start of the pandemic in March 2020, mobility in the metropolis is more difficult than ever and will soon become all but impossible if swift, meaningful action is not taken to address the crisis. Those who rely on various forms of public transportation, a demographic that includes the vast majority of people who live and work in Metro Manila, have been affected the most. But even those who use their own vehicles are contending with increasing gridlock. Regardless of the manner by which one commutes, the problem has far more serious implications than being a mere time-consuming annoyance. Forecasts about the country's economic recovery, which the government and various other authorities have optimistically predicted as about 6% gross domestic product or GDP growth this year, are based on the presumption that most people and businesses will be able to resume largely unrestricted activities. This is made possible by widespread vaccination, the relatively small number of COVID-19 cases, and the subsequent reduction of pandemic health protocols to the bare minimums of face mask usage and some limitations on crowd capacity for transportation, business establishments, and other venues. However, the surge of activity following the lifting of most restrictions at the beginning of last month has quickly overwhelmed the capacity of Metro Manila's overall transport infrastructure. New roads and bridges that were supposed to ease chronic traffic congestion have become congested themselves. Improvements to public transportation systems, such as the extension of the light rail transit to LRT2 eastward to Rizal, improvements to increase the capacity of the other rail lines, and the creation of the more efficient EDSA bus line have likewise not been effective. Prior to the pandemic, it was estimated that Metro Manila congestion was costing the economy about 2 billion per day. Although we have yet to see a proper study on the post-pandemic situation, by all appearances, that has not changed. And that cost will grow if the government does not find ways to quickly remove the bottlenecks. Bear in mind, the current untenable situation is happening while most students are still not attending in-person classes, adding those several million additional commuters to the mix, something the Department of Education, economic managers, and most parents and students are pressing to happen as soon as possible will change a bad situation into a calamity. Solving the gridlock problem requires a comprehensive approach, but unfortunately, the government has never developed such an overall plan. The closest it has come during the soon-to-expire Duterte administration is to gather several not necessarily related infrastructure projects under the umbrella of a so-called EDSA decongestion plan, the results of which, or lack thereof, are plain to anyone who even goes near Metro Manila's busy road. Most of the obvious fixes are relatively simple, but in order for any of them to be effective, they all must be carried out simultaneously. First, the government, specifically the Fiscal Incentives Review Board or FIRB, must immediately drop its stubborn and irrational insistence that companies return to full in-person work. The quickest way to reduce the number of commuters and the congestion they contribute to is allow those businesses and workers who can be flexible to continue working from home or use hybrid schedules. Second, the government must immediately increase the capacity of existing major commuter lines, particularly the three light rail lines, the Philippine National Railway Line and the EDSA bus line. The excuse that crowded buses and rail cars are a health risk is no longer relevant when people must wait for an hour or more in large crowds in stations or bus stops. Finally, the government must make an effort to accommodate and encourage non-motorized transportation. Many more commuters would be willing to bike or walk if they were able, but that this is far from the government's awareness is illustrated by the fact that none of three recently completed bridges have any accommodations for pedestrians or cyclists. And that's the editorial for Saturday, April 9, 2022. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram and listen to the Voice of the Times.